Hi everyone, this is Ali Hassan. This is presentation part number 10 on project management for all. This presentation on quality management system QMS overview and applications. It's presented by Mr. Maher Ameri, a very well-known quality expert in Iraq. Mr. Maher Ameri is certified from many international institutions like he's a Chartered Quality Institute UK practitioner. He's a QMS application and development consultant, co-founder and ex-head of the Iraqi Society of Quality Management System, and co-founder of Al Rokal, a company for engineering inspection limited, very well-known company in Iraq, and non-destructive testing level 3 holder according to the American standard. And his contact details is maher@alrokal.org. So I leave it to Maher. Okay.
Dear audience, good day to you, wherever you are. First of all, I'd like to express my deep thanks to Mr. Ali Hassan for his invitation to share you an experience about one of the vital international business keys and organization tools that enhancing the organization resilience and supporting the business continuity against the promptly changing work environment. Those are the quality management systems, QMS. In this shortcut presentation, we will talk about the QMS main concepts, terms, and applications throughout the organization, and advantages of the QMS towards development of the organization, human and material resources, and ramping up the organizational knowledge, which we commonly known as the know-how. In this slide, we talk about the elementary understanding of the term quality management system, as we need to be well aware about the three words that forming the term. We need to understand what is equality and why we should be concerned about. Of course, we are all concerned about equality because quality is compatibility of the product and services characteristics we need in our life with our expectations, our culture, our environment, and our values. And we do not want this compatibility to be sporadically done, but we want it to be continuously done. Therefore, in business, quality is meeting the customer requirements from the first time and every time. But some understands quality as a degree of excellence in characteristics which makes the product or service fit for purpose. When we talk about management, it is a process of leading and directing a single activity or series of interrelated activities via a set of statutory and regulatory liabilities describing the activities related authorities and responsibilities. In general, we have two categories of management. We have strategic management, which we sometimes call the administration, and it is responsible for set up the organization high policies, strategic direction, objectives, plans, and standard operation procedures. On the other hand, we have the operational management, which is responsible for the day-to-day implementation of the organization activities and set up the departmental goals. When we talk about what meant by system, it is an entity consisted of series of processes which complement each other and contained within clear boundaries with one input port and one output port. In the system, usually, output of a process is an input to the next one. Therefore, any change in a certain process input would lead to a series of changes in the consecutive processes as schematically illustrated in the next slide. In this slide, we simulate the QMS to a process approach model by which we understand how can we reach out the quality we seek via the QMS application. In this proposed model, the customer requirements would be the system input port, and inside the closed chamber, the management leads the operations towards achieving the intended results, which is quality of the product or service in form of the system output port. Method by which we measure extent of fulfilling the satisfaction sought by the customer. We call it the feedback. And we use it for correcting the nonconformance we figured out by that feedback. We note that there is an interference between the processes inside the operations chamber, and we can understand this interference as in the example of complete cycle for manufacturing a product. As we can see, the main stages of this cycle are the input port, which is the requirements of the customer. Inside the chamber, we have the management in the heart of the process, leading and directing the operations in order to reach out the quality of the product, which is the output port. The customer satisfaction is the feedback we obtained from the customer, or he may not be satisfied, but anyway, we will use this figure to correct the nonconformance and repeat the cycle again. If we talk about what we have done inside the chamber, we have the main processes for manufacturing a product, which are purchasing of the raw materials, then construction of the product, then operation of the product, then starting the production by the product, and then delivery of the product to the counterparty or the end user. The interference between purchasing and construction is the engineering and procurement of the materials and making the design. The interference between construction and operation is the commissioning and making the product ready to go inside the startup and real operation. The interference between operation and production is measuring and monitoring of the activities in order to achieve the highest level of quality. The interference between production and delivery is the interconnecting of the product with the rest plant products or activities. Therefore, scheme shown in the previous slide may be considered as a closed-loop control system in which the customer-defined requirements is the system input signal. The management heart of the system is the system actuator. Meeting the customer requirements, quality or conformity is the system output signal. Customer feedback, satisfied or not, as we said before, is the system positioner that leading the system to correct the condition until meeting the customer satisfaction. Based on the above concepts, it is concluded that the QMS is a precautionary system, utilizes the concept of risk assessment in order to ensure that output of each activity in the series of operations is correct and adequate to be input to the next activity and so on. In each activity or a process within the system, the following steps should be taken in consideration in order to minimize or eliminate risk against the targeted quality. These steps are identification of potential risks, then plan to address these risks, then traceability of the plan implementation, and eventually verification of achieving the intended results. In this slide, we talk about how much the QMS is useful to the organization to demonstrate its capability to meet the customer requirements from the first time and every time. And this we call the effectiveness of the system, which is defined as extent to which planned activities are realized and the planned results are achieved. In practice, QMS effectiveness demonstrates the QMS reliability, which stands on three piles. From the left, understanding of the customer expectations, and the company or organization operational discipline. Then the company or organization monitoring and measuring capabilities. These three piles, relevant activities, usually achieved by utilizing three types of resources as below: human resources, material resources, and documentation. In this slide, we can see that in the real life, the organization has variety of applications that need adoption of different QMSs in order to maintain its work continuity in the market. Therefore, and in order to facilitate application of different QMSs in the same organization in parallel manner, the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, issued what's so-called the Management System Standards, MSS. And some of the more applicable MSSs are ISO 9001, Quality Management System Standard, Managerial Standard; ISO 14001, Environment Management System Standard; ISO 45001, Occupational Health and Safety Management System Standard; ISO 50001, Energy Management System Standard; and ISO 10006, Quality Management Standard of Projects. But in practice, ISO 9001 may be considered the mother of the MSS, as all the rest MSSs refer to ISO 9001 as a reference in the standard structure main clauses. In reality, most of the MSSs are needed by the organization in order to facilitate application of more than one MSS in the same organization. The ISO issued the Annex SL, which provides high-level structure, HLS, by which the ISO unified the MSS's clauses in order to provide common terms, definitions, and major concepts. Those MSSs simultaneously is indeed a big responsibility due to variety of requirements needed. We can see in this slide that the ISO organization unified the QMSs in unified core elements and requirements with different discipline-specific requirements that may be applied by each type of MSS. In this slide, we will talk about the well-known, we will talk about the phases of the QMS establishing process, where the top management throughout the company or organization will start with adoption of the QMS related international standard. For example, starting with application of 9001 or whatever the other ISO or MSS. Then establishing of the QMS system by provision of adequate and controlled resources. Then establishing of the QMS relevant documentation, including policies, objectives, plans, procedures, protocols, etc. Then implementing of the system and monitoring of the system operational pattern. Then developing of the system in continual manner in order to ensure continuity of the organization in the market. To do this, the top management shall be duly committed to maintain the system effectiveness by, first, frequently assessing the human resources employees, training, qualification, awareness, physical condition, and so on. Then, frequently assessing the material resources, infrastructure, machines, tools, measuring devices, and instrumentation. Then, frequently assessing, auditing, or verifying the resources, both activities, relevant documents, and records to ensure that they are available in place, retrievable, and protected. In this slide, we will talk about the well-known PDCA cycle by which any QMS operated. The cycle was invented by Dr. Edwards Deming, who was the founder of the profound knowledge management theory. In this cycle, the top management will fulfill the customer requirements or quality, in other words, by the plan, do, check, act approach. And we can see on the scheme that receiving of the customer requirements is termed plan, and provision of the human and material resources is termed do, and realization of the product or service is termed check, where the product characteristics must be measured for verification, and in this case of any non-conformance, the correction must be done, and this is termed act. We can see the distribution of the cycle components over the production cycle by any type of organization, whatever is the size of this organization or nature of the product or service the organization producing. The process starts from the customer and other interested parties, requirements, planning by management, provision of the resources, realization of the product, checking and monitoring of the product characteristics towards the predetermined quality, and then correcting in case of any non-conformance. And this we will talk about the acting process, which is part of the continual improvement of the quality management system. In this slide, we can see the same cycle applied on the model we proposed earlier. The requirements of the customer, the input port is the phase plan. Directing and managing the activities inside the chamber is the do phase. Realization of the quality we need is the output Here we have the phase of check and receiving of the product by customer and obtaining his feedback. In case of any non-conformance, we will use the act phase to correct the non-conformance and repeat the cycle. If we or in any organization keep revolving this cycle over the time, the organization will reach the phase that meeting the customer requirement from the first time and every time. In this slide, we will talk about the high-level structure, which is illustrated in the previous slide. All MSs collaborated on common core elements and requirements. These elements shown in the form of common main clauses in the MSS as below. Scope of the QMS, normative references, terms and definitions, context of the organization, leadership, planning, support, operation, performance evaluation, and eventually improvement. If we redistributed the QMS clauses on the QMS effectiveness piles, we may obtain clearer understanding to the QMS operation pattern, as we can see in the next slide. Understanding of the customer expectation or requirements means QMS scope, context of organization, leadership, and the planning, risk assessment and management, and this includes quality policy, quality objectives, strategic direction, vision, and mission of the organization. The organization or company operational discipline means support and operations, and this includes infrastructure we need for the system, awareness, competence of the human resources, documented information to keep everything documented, protected, and retrievable, the customer communication in order to understand the customer requirements, expectations, and any change that might be highlighted by the customer during the production phase. And eventually, the internal communication, it means the relationships between the top management vertically with the departments, divisions, and units, and horizontally between the departments or among the departments and units and divisions. The company monitoring and measuring capabilities means support, performance evaluation, and improvement, and this includes monitoring and measurement devices and resources, internal audit, control of non-conformity, corrective action, and improvement. Eventually, we can realize how useful application of the QMS throughout an organization is. As you know, adoption of a QMS by the organization would be an added value toward the organization following matters. First, enhance the organization reputation and ramp up the organization competition capabilities within the market, and enhance the organizational resilience and work continuity, and motivate the organization operational discipline, and motivate the specialty of a skill throughout the organization, and develop the organizational knowledge throughout the organization management levels, and facilitate the global supply chains and motivate the organization value chain, what we mean by supply chain and value chain. We can see that the improvement of the organization QMS is a factor moves between two processes. The supply chain, which is the series of activities starting from the raw material provision and up to delivery of the product or service to the customer. On the other hand, contrarily, the value chain starts from understanding the customer needs and expectations and move back in order to improve the product characteristics by improving the manufacturing process activities performance accordingly. At the end, to thank you for your attention, and in case of any clarification or questions, kindly email me on the email address mentioned in slide number 1. Thank you so much once again, and goodbye.
And on behalf of everyone, I'd like to thank Mr. Maher Ameri on this very valuable presentation on QMS, and to thank you also for your continuous support, and hope to see you in the next presentation. Thank you and goodbye.